Deidra, I'm right here if you need me. All you have to do is say my name. I'll pop right on again, okay?
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you all for having us here today. I'm sorry. There we go. All right. Hello, my name is Deidra Williams. I use the pronouns she, her, and I am the Social Services Program Director at the Milwaukee LGBT Community Center. My email is included just in case you have any questions after this presentation. A little bit about me is I've been working with youth for about 23 years or so now. It's been my passion to work with youth and also to supervise young adults into the social services career path. So I supervise interns from all over the local universities, UW Marquette, Alverno, MATC, at the Milwaukee LGBT Community Center. We'll go into detail about some of the services we have here and how to be inclusive with the LGBT community. And Bex?
Yes, hi. I'm Bex. Straight. I use he, they pronouns. I'm the transgender and gender non-conforming program coordinator here at the Milwaukee LGBT Community Center. My email is also included. That is quite a mouthful, but yeah, what that basically means is I head up the trans program. A little bit newer to the community center, but been doing this work in Milwaukee now for a couple years. Yeah, and I'm just excited to talk with you all today. Thanks.
Okay, so just to get started, one of the things that we go off of is cultural competence and versus cultural humility. Cultural competence is basically focusing on the prescriptive way of teaching culture, like I can know everything about the culture by becoming competent in it. And so part of the things, both are included today, like you're in this training, you do research on your own, and that's just saying, I know about it because I have taken the time to learn about it. And cultural humility is a lifelong process of learning as an outsider to commit to understanding the power dynamics and embracing the complexity of the experience. So one of the things that we all do, whether you're in the LGBT community or not, is continuing like with trainings, reading books, talking to others, because it's constantly changing. And that could be with any culture, especially with us working in the mental health field and social services. It's very important that we continue to learn so that we can help the people that we're serving. Okay, and just for a session breakdown of today, we're going to go over some LGBTQ terminology, gender exploration, intersections of LGBTQ identities, pronouns. Um, Normally, when we do this in person, it's easier for us to say, interrupt us whenever because we're open to that. It's a little harder today with me presenting. I can't see when people have questions. So there's definitely going to be enough time after the presentation for us to have a discussion. And what I like to say is this is a safe space to ask, because sometimes when we're working directly with individuals, it's not always appropriate to ask certain questions. So also, if you're not comfortable with asking in a large group today, feel free to email Bex or myself and we'll definitely connect with you. Also, if you need to send Amy the question and she send it to me. If not, when we're done, we definitely can have a discussion about any questions that you have about anything that we've discussed, or something that we didn't discuss and you still have a question about. All right, LGBT terminology. And why are these terms important for discussion? They're common terms that are frequently used by the community, and their sub-communities within the communities in which within these identities may still exist. That way we're competent when we're talking to individuals and they feel comfortable that you are competent with working with them and you are trying to learn. And they are good introductory words to understand gender and sexuality. And these words These are words that the broader population may recognize and can be used to advocate for the LGBTQ plus community. Okay, LGBTQ plus. The L, lesbian or gay. There's someone who experiences romantic, emotional, and or sexual attraction to people of the same gender. Bisexual is someone who experiences romantic, emotional, and or sexual attraction to people of the same or other genders. Transgender, someone whose gender identity does not match the sex that they were assigned at birth. Queer, and queer right now, that's an umbrella term. Some people who identify even as lesbian may say that they're queer. It's just identifying them with the community. Or some people who are non-binary, they choose to use the word queer. Q can also be questioning, someone who's questioning their sexuality or gender identity. They may be learning themselves, and so they're questioning as to how they identify. Intersex is used for a variety of situations in which a person is born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't fit the boxes of female or male. And we have asexual or aromantic, people who have a lack of sexual romantic desire, not saying that they don't want to be in relationships, they just don't have the sexual desire or romantic desire with a partner usually. And pansexual is sexual, romantic, or emotional attraction towards people regardless of their sex or gender identity. And we'll go more into detail about the gender identities. And just going back to the word queer, it is a complex term because it's been used against the community as a slur in many cases, but the young folks now are choosing to reclaim this name and identity. And some people, like I said, use it interchangeably with LGBTQ plus, with their LGBTQ plus, that's a tongue twister, identity. So like if you're working with someone and you use the word queer and you don't identify as part of the community, if they ask you not to use it, just be respectful and choose and don't use the word. Some more terms that may not be as common as those terms is same gender loving. This label is often used by members of the Black community to express an alternative to gay or lesbian. And down low, this is a term that's probably been more popular within the last 15 or so years. And it's a term typically used by Black men who have sex with men who usually identify as heterosexual. And sometimes you will see MSM, and that's just a shortened version of men who sleep with men. And heterosexism or heteronormativity, the assumption that all people are heterosexual and that heterosexuality is the norm. I think we use it all like, you know, we may, just because someone may identify as female, or like, oh, are you married? Do you have a husband? Those types of things where there's definitely other words that we can use or terms that we can use besides assuming that a person is heterosexual and has a husband. Do you have a partner? That could be an example of that. And just a lot of people may not know exactly what intersex is. So this short video does a great job of talking to some individuals who are intersex, and they're able to tell their own story.
Raise your hands if you have testes. I'm Pigeon.
I'm Alice.
I'm Emily.
I'm Cypher.
And we are Intersexy.
Intersex describes a person who doesn't fit the typical definition of male or female.
I have XY chromosomes, but typical female genitalia.
I'm a girl who has testes and XY chromosomes.
I identify as a queer, gender non-conforming intersex person.
I identify as a Black intersex man.
Intersex is not new. It's been around since the beginning of human existence. I mean, there's probably even intersex dinosaurs, if you think about it.
Transgender has to deal with your gender identity, whereas intersex has to deal with your biological characteristics.
Often, intersex people get surgeries that they don't want, and transgender people have to fight for surgeries that they do want. They gave my mom the excuse that the internal testes were cancerous, that I would develop cancer.
They didn't even come up with an excuse, basically, in terms of a health-related reason. They instead just said it was about the appearance.
A lot of doctors are very uncomfortable with the idea that I have testes, and they're still trying to get them removed, but I'm perfectly healthy and there's nothing wrong with them.
They did a surgery to remove my testes and told my parents to take me home and just raise me as a girl, and I didn't find out about it myself until I was 12.
There aren't a lot of options, or medical providers don't explore other options. My mom would put me in dresses and she would be like, "Oh, aren't you so cute and you're so pretty?" And I would be like, "No, this is horrible." I was put on hormonal treatment, which consisted of estrogen and progesterone. I just wanted to belong. I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be different. So even though I knew something felt amiss, I conformed. He was very condescending. He was like, "You intersex activists don't know what you're talking about."
It's difficult for intersex people to find each other because from an early age we're told not to talk about our bodies.
I did feel like I was the only one.
My doctors always told me there was nobody else like me, and so it just perpetuates a vicious cycle of shame and stigma that we can't break out of. I would tell another intersex person that you are worthy, you are lovable.
Your body is beautiful. You're beautiful.
Intersex people don't need to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with them.
I know you feel like you might not be able to get through this. I know you might have really dark thoughts, but I want you to know that meeting other intersex people and finding a community or a support group can be one of the most important aspects in your healing process. And we're out there, we're out here, we're here. And I just hope you can find us. Raise your hands if you have testes.
Okay, normally I would ask if you had any questions, but if you do, make sure you write them down, save them for us for the end of the discussion. Now we'll have Bex go over gender exploration.
Yeah, thanks, Deidra. Gender exploration. So when we start talking about this, and again, this is more set up if we could be more interactive, it'd be a little bit easier, but I'll just kind of run you through it. We usually start this discussion asking you all to just think about gender in the way that you already know it, right? So probably when you were in school at one point, maybe in like biology class or something, you learned that gender was there's man and there's woman, and that's what gender is. You're, born, the doctor says it's a boy or a girl, and because of that, you grow up knowing certain things about yourself and all of those kinds of things, right? That is what is referred to as the gender binary, right? Is the idea that gender only exists as man or woman and nothing else. It's just those two binary options, and that we have to act certain ways based on which of those binary genders we were assigned at birth, right? But if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so really what we know is that those are gender roles, right? That's the way in which, we were told we were expected to act. So I kind of alluded to some of this before, but right, ways that women are expected to act. We're told in society, right, that women are supposed to be more of the caretakers, be, like Pink, play with dolls, right, starting at an early age. Women are maybe expected to be quieter or have more emotions or stuff like that, versus what we're told by society, the way that men are supposed to act is to be the providers and be tough and like trucks and playing in dirt, from an early age and all of those kinds of things, right? But really, those are just the ideas that society has told us in ways that we need to act, and those are just like the gender roles that are kind of thrust upon us. why do we start talking about this gender binary and these gender roles? Well, it's really just to get you all thinking about, you know, those boxes that we're kind of all put in, and how it doesn't, you know, not only does that not kind of fit for trans folks, but doesn't fit for a lot of us, right? So when we're talking about being more expansive in our ideas about gender, it's something that can be freeing and liberating for all people, not just for people who identify as transgender. So we go to the next one. So now that we've kind of had some of those ideas floating around in our heads, right? What does all of this actually mean? What do all these terms actually mean? So when we talk about sex, we're often talking about sex assigned at birth, right? So sex assigned at birth is really just that, you know, you were born, the doctor will usually like look down at the genitals of a baby and say, oh, this is a boy or this is a girl. We already just kind of learned a little bit about intersex, so we know that that sex itself is more expansive than that, right? That it's not as simple as there are just boys and girls. But typically, this is what happens, right? You're born, you get assigned either male or female gender by a doctor. So a person who is trans, right, as we said before, is just someone whose gender identity is not the same as that sex they were assigned at birth. So it can be someone who was assigned female at birth and now identifies as a man. It can be someone who was, you know, assigned male at birth and identifies as a female. It can be someone who was assigned either female or male at birth and identifies as non-binary or gender fluid or any of these other more like in-between sort of gender terms. And then that is contrasted with cisgender, right, which is just a person whose gender identity still aligns with their sex that they were assigned at birth. That's all it is. It's just the opposite of trans. So in the next set of terms, so then what does all this mean, right? What are some other ways in which we describe this? Is transition, right? And we put this definition of transition up here just to call out like a transition isn't just a medical process with your doctor, right? You can transition socially, you can transition medically or like physically in some certain ways, or even in some contexts kind of like legally, right? If you go through like the legal name change or gender marker update process. So that is just to say that someone's gender identity is something that is known within them, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take certain steps or not take certain steps to feel affirmed in that, or do certain parts of their transition. It can be all of the things I listed in the definition. It can be none of the things, right? That's kind of unique to the person. So then gender identity, right? Gender identity is a person's perception and knowing of what their gender is kind of like in their brain. And that is different from gender expression, which is kind of the like outward appearance of what someone looks like, right? So that's how someone dresses, more of their social behaviors, just kind of maybe their haircut, maybe if they choose to wear makeup or not, right? Some of those other things. That's the like outward thing. That's their gender expression. So now this next slide that we're going to show you is, you know, one of our coworkers like say it's so controversial and it's just this little unicorn, right? So this gender unicorn is really, I think, just a great visual example to break down a lot of the stuff we were talking about. So it starts with gender identity. You can see in the unicorn's little thought bubble, right, the ideas that this unicorn has about its gender and about how it identifies personally. That's different, right, from its gender expression, which are all of those green little dots on the outside, showing that that's just like the physicalness, the hair, maybe makeup, maybe clothes, maybe other things about a person. that's also, you know, can be different from their sex assigned at birth, which is kind of shown by those chromosomes or like maybe that genital area. And then all of those things are different than physical attraction or emotional attraction, right? And I think this is, again, just like a really good visual representation to break down how all these things are separate from one another, and just kind of show that they don't always align, right? In some individuals, their gender identity and their gender expression and their sex assigned at birth, right? And all of that will perfectly align, and others it won't, right? So like, just to give an example, I can run through mine real quick, right? Like my gender identity, I identify as a trans man, also non-binary. I hold both of those gender identities. My gender expression, I do think that I tend to dress and act in very like traditionally masculine ways. So those maybe kind of align a little bit, but not always. Sometimes I wear, you know, clothes out of the women's section or whatever, right? Then that can also be separate, right, from my sex assigned at birth. I'm a trans man, so my sex assigned at birth is female, and then physical and emotional attraction, right? I'm physically attracted to honestly most people, regardless of gender, but I'm mostly emotionally attracted to women, so I tend to date women, right? And all of those things are unique and separate from one another. So if you want to go to the next one, Deidra. Yeah, so now putting this all together, right? So we talked about some of these things. We talk about all of these different terms, sexual orientation versus gender identity versus some other stuff. And really what this graphic is just trying to show is that when we talk about any of these things, when you have identities, right, like as a queer and trans person, the intersectionality of that can put me farther away from kind of that center of power and privilege. At the same time, you know, still recognizing that I'm still a masculine perceived person, I'm still a white person, right? So some of those things put me closer to power and privilege in certain ways. But really what we're trying to call out here is just that each one of these things on this wheel, when you start to combine different things, you know, maybe someone who has less education or who has a disability or X, Y, and Z can put them in a spot where they're just not, it can be even harder for those individuals to access certain things, to get the care support that they need or any of that, right? And so when we look at the next slide, there we go. Yeah, so when we look at on the next slide, you know, when we talk about this community, or really all of these, you know, it's kind of a combination of a lot of small communities. We talk about one of those intersecting pieces, right? LGBTQ people of color. They're 24% more likely to have negative or discriminatory treatment from a doctor or healthcare provider. 44% more likely that they face discrimination. It's affected their ability to rent or purchase a home, right? 48% more likely to live at an income of $40,000 a year or less, right? And so these are some like, and this is nationally, these statistics, right? And so this is really striking when we think about some of those intersecting identities. But then if we go even to the next slide, there's got to be a delay on
Yeah, I think it's a delay because
yeah, I know you're hitting it and I'm like, oh, it's just that internet, I gotta wait for it. Yeah, so then when we dial into Wisconsin specifically, right, and this is just looking at LGBTQ folks in Wisconsin, we see like a 9% unemployment rate, 11% uninsured, you know, 18% food insecure, 25% live below the poverty line, right? And I always like to call out that these numbers don't look as stark as the ones we just saw. And it's maybe kind of hard to see on the little picture on the screen. But but that's compared to like the unemployment rate of 9% for LGBTQ people in Wisconsin is compared to 4%. Their non-LGBTQ peers is a rate of just 4%, right? And so a lot of these statistics are, twice as high, if not more, for LGBTQ folks, right? And if we had the data on LGBTQ folks of color or those with disabilities or stuff like that, I'm sure those numbers would be even higher. And we can directly relate, the statistics before, these statistics now, we can directly relate that to just the job discrimination, housing discrimination, harassment, and violence that exists when we talk about things like the pervasive heteronormativity in society and stuff like that. And so we really just like to call out some of these numbers to just, just like put that concrete thing. You go like, oh, why do we need to care about this? Why is this important? Those numbers show you really why. And now like Deidra can take you into maybe like, okay, but where do we go from here? And how do we move forward and try and make society more accepting?
Right. And so now we're going to go into pronouns and why they are important. And we have a short video that also explains from people who identify in the LGBT community.
Wow.
Oh my God, okay.
So tiny. Do I have to do it that one?
What a prank.
Okay, I don't.
Pronouns are basically words used to refer to a person rather than their name.
They, she, and he are all examples of common pronouns.
He and she are gendered pronouns.
She's typically used by people who identify as female, and he's typically used by people who identify as male.
However, he or she pronouns are sometimes used by people who don't identify as strictly male or female.
Some people prefer gender-neutral pronouns.
Gender-neutral pronouns are generally used by people who identify as genderqueer or non-binary.
A few common gender-neutral pronouns are they, ze, and a, but there are a whole array of gender-neutral pronouns.
People think long and hard about the pronouns they'd like to use and why.
If you use the wrong pronoun for someone, that's what's called misgendering.
When a person has new pronouns, it can take a bit of getting used to, but it's really important to use the right ones.
A person's identity is very important, and it's super important to respect that.
So when people use the wrong pronoun to me, I find that I've gone through all this effort to kind of come out and be myself, and it's kind of just thrown back in my face. Coming out for me was mainly awkward with a lot of people that used to know me. People didn't understand. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding. When people get my pronouns right, it makes me feel like I'm, like being myself, and people are responding to that and are just like respecting me as a person.
When people get my pronouns right, I feel respected by them, and I end up feeling a lot more comfortable around them.
Sometimes if you identify someone with a different pronoun that they don't identify as, you can potentially actually upset them. And I don't think you should be upsetting someone in this process. And that's why I think it's very important to know what someone identified themselves as and respect it.
It's not about like you're a terrible person if you mess up, or you're a terrible person if you take time to adjust. You're totally not. But it's more about making that extra effort for someone that you do care about, or just kind of being a bit considerate that everyone has different needs, and it's just a really cool thing to do for a person. And I think it's easy to not quite get that, or just see it as, there's a person who's mad at you, and outwardly they might be a little bit upset, but inwardly what they're feeling that's motivating that reaction is so much more an understanding that they're not hating on you. It's just that they really are probably a bit fed up and a bit hurt.
It's not always easy to come out and tell people that you're trans.
Never assume someone's pronouns. Just ask if you're not sure. Using the correct pronouns is a pretty big deal, and it's a really awesome thing to do.
Genitals don't equal gender.
This is probably the biggest mistake people make. It's a pretty easy assumption to make, but genitals and body don't actually reflect anything about a person's gender at all.
Above all else, don't try and argue with this person, whether you personally agree or not. A person who's asking you to use those pronouns likely has put a lot of thought into it and trusts you.
Basically, what's more important? Someone's anatomy or who they really are and their happiness?
Sometimes, however, you will slip up and use the wrong pronouns. It's not good, but it does happen.
Getting used to someone's new pronoun can take time.
And you may feel pretty awkward or even guilty when you make a mistake.
Some may sound pretty strange at first, and changing the words you use in general can be harder than expected.
If you do slip up accidentally, it's important to not lash out at the person or blame them.
You might not pick it up instantly, and it's important to try hard on this. But if you do slip up, don't snap on it.
Just keep trying your best and you'll get the hang of it with time.
Don't freak out, just make a quick apology, correct yourself, and keep going with the conversation.
Making a big deal out of it, it's probably going to make them feel bad and make the situation very uncomfortable for both of you.
If you hear someone deliberately or even accidentally using the wrong pronouns for a person, don't hesitate to pull them up on it and politely correct them.
Hopefully that helps to explain pronouns a little bit better and lets you know how much it can mean to a person. And it's super important to get them right as much as possible.
Something as small as a tiny word like that could have a huge impact on a gender diverse person.
Both how they feel at the moment and how they feel in the long term.
Having good, accepting, awesome, and loving people around you can really be life-changing.
Thank you so much for watching our video. This video was completely written, filmed, and edited by us, the gender diverse and same-sex attracted young people at -18. Help support trans young people by sharing this video far and wide. And please support the work we do by subscribing to our channel. Wow!
So I hope that video was helpful and helped you gain a more clear understanding. So we have some examples on like a table. So subjective is she, objective her, possessive hers, reflective herself. So she is speaking. But I know we're all familiar on how to use he, she when we're however, I know some people tend to struggle to use they. Normally non-binary individuals are using they, them pronouns. And so we just have to get used to using that. And normally it's pretty easy with practice. Instead of saying he or she is speaking, they are speaking. I listen to them. So, and then the Z, those are typically, some people use those. But sometimes those are used in like other countries, but then some people here pick up and use those. And that's some examples to the right also for those. So practice time. Normally we would turn to the person that's closest to us and practice just hearing yourself saying it. So my name is Deidra and I use she, her pronouns. And that's just something that we could do when we're having these types of meetings in work settings. And that shows your LGBTQ coworkers, associates, partners that you work with in the community that you are, inclusive, and that person just that little introduction may make a person feel more comfortable with working with you. And so also normalizing it by asking, it's better off to ask than just assume with someone's pronouns, because as Beck spoke earlier, gender expression, I very well can go by she, but on some days maybe I am dressed in a more way that would be more masculine. And so maybe I may have he pronouns or she, but you wouldn't know for sure. So it's just always good to share. So if I'm saying, hey, hi, my name is Deidra, she, her are my pronouns, and may I ask your name and pronouns, please? And that way it makes the situation less uncomfortable. And you may get some people who are like, what are you talking about? Because they're not familiar with it either. But that's where we have those teaching moments that shows that we're competent in what we're doing and saying. And mistakes will happen. And it's as simple as, and the mistakes could be with people that you've known for a while and you're still learning their pronouns. And so you may say someone who identifies as he, male, and you may say, oh, she, use a she pronoun, and all you have to do is say, oh, I apologize, and just say, oh, she. Just like, don't overly apologize, because that can like cause attention to what's happening versus just correcting yourself. And so also practice using gender neutral language. So what gendered terms are commonly used. Like one of the things I noticed, and we go into situations, there's a group of people and we say, hey guys. And for some people, it doesn't bother them, but some it could. But that's also in the practice of say, oh, hello everyone, or how are you all doing? Versus just, hey guys. I think we also, those are some of the alternatives that we can use. And I guess another thing would be like, what alternatives are you all already using? And best practice with interacting with transgender folks, just treat them, I mean, they're people, so treat them the same as you respect anyone else. There's nothing special or different that you need to do. Just show general respect, and refer to people with the name and pronoun that they ask to be called. And this is sometimes a struggle at the center, like working with youth especially, and they're in the process of, learning their identity. Family members, sometimes, especially parents, they struggle with this, with referring to them as their chosen name and their pronouns. And so it definitely could be difficult for some, but if that person is asking you to go by their name and the pronouns that they're choosing, try your best and actually, refer to them that way. And ask politely how someone wants to be addressed. We kind of talked about that already. That's as simple as in an introduction. It could also be in a conversation if you know you have a friend or family member who is transitioning. You can have a conversation and let them know like you want to respect them and honor their wishes. And so just have a conversation about it. And never reveal a person's transgender status. So that would be considered partially as outing a person. Every person, whether they're transgender or LGB, they may not be out to everyone. They may respect you and choose to be out to you, but they may not be out to other family members or coworkers or just the community at whole. So if you're not sure, it's not our job to reveal that or to tell anyone. You respectfully let them do that themselves. Avoid negative facial reactions and offensive language. Some people are very disrespectful towards the fact of working with transgender individuals or being in their presence, and it's offensive just to do that. And remember that working with a transgender person is not always a training opportunity. So that's what you have these types of trainings for, to talk in these trainings and to get a better understanding or to do it on your own. You may have someone in your life who's transgender who's very open to speaking about being transgender, but you may also have some who feel like it's not their job to educate you on who they are. So just remember that if that person is open to you and offers, fine, but you don't want to like be disrespectful and just kind of ask random questions out of the blue. And educate yourself and others about transgender issues. So for me, it's always just been like, if I have friends or family members who say things I definitely know that aren't true or disrespectful, I have no problem with speaking to them and, correcting what they said. And so just I kind of briefly touched on these. How else can you help? Educate yourself around these issues. Like I said, these trainings, the internet, coming to the LGBT Center, reaching out to one of us here, validate and affirm LGBTQ persons' identities. If they tell you this how they identify, please respect that. And advocate for LGBT people that you know personally, for better policies with your companies and your schools, and better local and state national policies. And just some other tips on how to be a good ally. One of the first things that should have been listed is you don't have to yell it from the mountains that you're an ally, because your actions will show better than your words. So these are some of the ways that I practice being an ally. just being a listener, just listening to the things that they're going through and listening to think about how I can help support them in the workplace or schools or in the community, and be open-minded. Listen, because you may learn something from an LGBT individual, and also we all have individual things about ourselves that we want others to be open-minded about. So, keep that level of respect for them also, and be willing to advocate things that you can do in your workplace. Do you all have gender neutral restrooms, office? Do you, does your name tags at work identify your pronouns? Does your email signatures have your pronouns in them? Just those small things can show that you're that you can be an advocate and that you can be a supporter. If you do work in a school or work around youth, do you have signage in your offices or in your buildings that shows that you're an advocate? And ask questions when appropriate, like we said, during these types of trainings, or when you do have someone who you can talk to, and do research. There's a lot out there right now, and you'll be surprised the things that you can bring to the table to teach others. And be inclusive, as far as like even if you just hang out with people, don't assume like, oh, they wouldn't want to do this because they're LGBT, they wouldn't want to go to this event. It's mainly straight people. Like, it's not about that. It's just being inclusive and being a friend, like you would be to anyone. And to realize that anti-LGBT jokes and comments are harmful. Like, and sometimes I understand you may not want to speak out amongst the group, but if you're comfortable, please do, or make sure it gets corrected in some type of way, because you don't want to create that type of environment in your workplace or around you within your own personal group, outside of work even. And these are just some online resources where you can go to continue to educate yourself. National Center for Transgender Equality, and they're really supporting a lot of the new laws and things that are trying to be passed. Human Rights Campaign, they're a good resource. PFLAG, we have PFLAG and GSAFE. We have local chapters of those for Wisconsin. So they definitely could be areas to go when you're looking for local resources. And Wisconsin Department of Health Services. And so now we've I feel like we've educated you somewhat about terminology and just pronouns, and just giving an overall better understanding. And so what I like to do now is kind of go into some of the programming that we have here at the center. And I want to touch on like how we were talking about a whole new world and new possibilities and everything that's out there. So right now at the Milwaukee LGBT Community Center, over half of the staff, probably about 75% of the staff, have been here less than 1 year. So during the pandemic, a lot of the staff, left for different reasons. There's a lot of turnover. And we were just kind of thinking, where is the center going to go? How are we going to survive? We didn't have an associate executive director. We didn't have an executive director. The board of directors were helped with running the center. But we still had a lot of the coordinators still continue to make sure programming was happening. So we really had to get creative. And with each program, we had to find ways to be creative, because there were different needs for all of the programs that we have here at the center. And so I had to think outside the box along with my coworkers and say, how do we make sure the community gets the support and the supplies that they need, which a lot of you also had to consider. And so a lot of things that we did, we went virtual, and that was more positives than negatives with virtual, right? Some of the positives was definitely we reached to individuals across the United States who would come to support groups, who would come to us for resources. So that was a really good thing that came about from the pandemic. However, on the flip side, like Bex talked about the intersectionality and, you know, where do you sit on that circle of power, right? We have a lot of people who necessarily didn't have the capabilities or the abilities to reach out virtually because they didn't have internet access, they didn't have laptops, they didn't have, you know, certain cell phones. So we had to figure out, how do we still reach out to those individuals also. Overall, we did reach out to a lot more individuals and were able to help a lot more people. So for instance, I'll talk about our aging and disabilities programs. So we have support groups for we call it FAB 50 and better. And with the older adults, that was a struggle. Imagine trying to be the coordinator of that program and teaching like people generally 60 and up how to get onto Zoom, how to utilize Google Meet. It was a struggle, but our coordinator, Christy, was excellent with even providing like one-on-one services, how she, whenever she could, over the phone until they were able to log on. And a lot of them now are excited because it helped them learn how to communicate with friends and family members, because the struggles with our aging population and disability populations, we don't think about it, but it's social isolation. Many of us who are able to drive and get around and walk and do whatever we need to do to talk to others also feel socially isolated. But just imagine, you know, you're 60 and older, and a lot of LGBT older individuals, they have chosen families because a lot of their families have chosen not to be involved with them because of their identities, or also once you get older, you begin to lose friends and family. But a lot of, that's what when talking to the older adults, that's a lot of what they said, like social isolation was horrible for them. And they knew also because of their identity that they just didn't have a lot of people. So our older and our aging population, they have a really strong bond here at the center. And so now they are able to come back into the center, and we're seeing that grow. So we're excited about that. And our disabilities programming, and those are just not people with physical disabilities. It's also like mental, social disabilities. We work with them in a support group, and they're actually becoming more involved. And right now it's virtual because it's easier for accessibility. But hopefully we're working on ways to hopefully partner with others in the other agencies in the community so we can grow a disabilities program. So if anyone works at one of those agencies, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to collaborate to help build that programming. Project Q. So with the youth, they love coming into Project Q. They love being interactive with one another. And so we had to go into the virtual meetings during the pandemic. For the youth, it started off strong, but I think between school for hours and then coming back on for virtual, it kind of faded away. So we're trying to figure out, how do we reach the youth? And one of the ways, because school was able to go back in sooner than us being able to reopen in person at the center, we began really amping up and going to more and more schools. And because we were virtual, a lot of school districts and people in different school districts were able to reach out to us. So not only are we in Milwaukee Public Schools, we're in Oak Creek, and we're in South Milwaukee and Wauwatosa. So that was a good thing, because not everyone is able to come as a youth to the center. And our youth services is considered ages to 13 to 24. So that's a big gap for school age youth. And so we had to figure out programming for middle school all the way to college individuals, or even young adults who are living very independently already, how to balance that out and how to have programs for those individuals. And so we were going to schools, other community groups that were open. For example, Pathfinders, they never closed during the pandemic. just giving them a shout out. They work with homeless youth in Milwaukee. And so we were still able to connect with them also. And then our recovery and victim services. So this is a big area where we saw a lot of transition, right? One of the things about our recovery and victim services, we work with people in crisis. So of course we saw a lot more crisis, and we had to figure out how do we meet their needs. So we were able to put together different packages for them with COVID tests, the PPE that they would need, gloves, masks, cleaning supplies, and so also with food. The nice thing about our food pantry, it goes hand in hand with that. Our food pantry is pretty small. We run off of donations and some that we purchase ourselves. But with our food pantry, you don't need to provide us with an address of residency. You can come once a week. We give you food, and we have a clothing closet with some of those basic needs for clothing, and they're able to come once a week for those items. And so we were trying to figure out how do we still get those items to people. So we were just trying to, like, at least sometimes let them at least just come pick up those things, or if we were able to offer like food cards, those are the types of things that we were able to do. As far as with the crisis, so we started working with 211, and that picked up, and it actually created a whole new position at the center. We have a partnership and crisis manager, and that person is able to connect with different partners to help our victims of crisis who may be dealing with homelessness, domestic violence, sexual assault. And so we're still building up that program, but definitely we serve those individuals. It's an unfortunate position to create, but we're also glad that we can help meet those needs of those individuals. And transgender services and programs, that's Beck's program. Would you like to speak about that, Bex?
Yeah, I can quickly talk about that. Yeah, so the trans program, we also have support groups. We do have like social events, like once a month we have a game night. Outside of that, also I just try and help get people, like if they need help with a name change, get them connected to medical resources, right? So like if they need a doctor, they're looking for somewhere to start hormones, or looking to get more information about where to go to find surgeons or stuff like that, can certainly help them out with those kinds of things. And then, yeah, even just like meeting one-on-one with folks as we're able to talk about where they're at in their own lives and their own journey, and help them on from there. But those are kind of the basic stuff that we do. And I always encourage people to reach out, because if I don't, know the answer, I'll try and go find it for someone. So.
And one thing I do want to add to that is the name change cost is completely covered for individuals. The only thing they may have to pay for, I think, is like if they get a new birth certificate. But so just if you have individuals who are interested in that service, just know that we're able to cover the cost of that. We also have a cyber center. Now that people are able to come back in, they're free to use the computers here at the center and print things if they need to. We have meeting space. So what we try to do, if any of the orgs online, if you want to host a meeting, you're another, especially a nonprofit organization, we try to help provide that meeting space for you all. And also we have a library. We have one of the state's largest libraries, over 3,000 selections. So if you ever want to come in and check out a book, please feel free to come in and do that. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn and grow with us. That's the general, our website right there, but also Bex and I did supply our emails. We can also put them in a chat. So if you need to reach out to us directly, we would be more than happy to do so. And so now what we like to do is have some discussion about things, like anything you feel like we didn't touch on, or any ways that you still feel like we had to change or pivot during this time, during the pandemic or after the pandemic. We are very open to discussing that.
I have a question.
Mhm.
With the name change, is that something you need to be 18 years old in order to qualify to change your name?
Yeah, so right now we're only able to provide the funding aspect for folks who are 18 or older. Legally, though, you only need to be 14 and older to complete a name change without parental consent. So if there is a younger person, I can certainly talk to them about the process. But we just only we're helping folks with name changes with the help of some lawyers from the area, and they legally can't represent a minor. So
Thank you.
that's what
That does answer that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, before the discussion gets too off out into the ocean, I just wanted to thank you both so much for coming and for such a lovely presentation. And just a reminder to change agents too, feel free, please, to turn your camera on. And if you have questions or use the chat, both are just great right now. Oh, one more thing before people started. Just a reminder that if you haven't ever been to a change agent meeting, you get your certificate of attendance. It will be dropped into the comments section. It's a link. You answer a few questions, and then you push submit, and then another link will pop up. That is your certificate of attendance. So just a reminder about that too. So okay, now I will be quiet.
I'm sorry, I missed that link. Can you post that link again on the chat room?
For the certificate of attendance?
No, for Deidra and Bex's.
Okay.
Yeah, I did just put, well, and Deidra did as well, put our emails in the chat, so you should be able to grab them from there now. I do also see someone asked in the chat if we have resources for trans folks who are pregnant. So I guess depending on what resources they're looking for, like we have clinics that work a lot with trans folks. So you could certainly give them the names of certain clinics that would be good places to go to talk to a doctor. But outside of that, I don't think anything specific. It would have to be, yeah, if the person was interested in talking more about that or what specifically they needed, definitely have them reach out to me.
Yeah, the inclusion clinic at Freighter, that's where some people put. Definitely, we work with them a lot. Also, one of the really important things I did forget to mention, we have licensed mental health therapists here at the center, and they are able to see individuals free of charge. So that's really exciting. And they see individuals. We also have couples counseling. They're also licensed in substance use. So definitely we can connect you to those individuals if you are interested or know anyone who's interested in those services also.
For those services, Deidra, do they have to be referred by like a doctor, a primary care doctor or agency or 211?
For therapy?
Yes. How do they go about attending the therapy that you provide?
So the process for that, if you go to our website, or we can just, do you have Sarah's email, Bex? So definitely on our website. I'm sorry, definitely on our website. there's a link that you can click and it'll email our clinical director. And that's basically the process that we're using now. We are upgrading it, so there will be like a more official resource referral system, but there's not really any referral system. No, you don't have to be referred from like a court or a case manager. They can reach out to the center themselves. If you know someone, you can, and you're a case manager for someone, you can send that information. You know, you can email us that information and we can like reach out to you that way too. I'm just going back to get questions. Did that answer your question, Mark? I want to make sure.
It's Mark Andy, but yeah.
Mark, I'm sorry. Is the name change assistance available to all adults, not just those who have limited ability income? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is open, no matter your identity. Also, I want to say that about the services at the center, right? You don't have to identify as LGBT. It's open for everyone, but the center is for people, so they do have somewhere comfortable to come with those identities, but we're also open and welcome to serve people who don't hold one of those identities.
See, someone asked where the center is located. So we're at 315 West Court Street, which is like MLK and Court. So it's right by Golda Meir School, if you're familiar with that is. It's also like right off MLK, pretty close to downtown, so like a couple blocks north of the Pfizer Forum. But yeah. Do we offer virtual / telehealth for counseling? Yes, our mental health professionals can meet with people virtually as well as in person.
So yeah, I do see, let's see. You know, I understand too, like, you know, you hold a certain identity and you're not sure if you want to be open or not about that to your participants or clients. And that's definitely a personal decision to make, right? Especially for safety reasons. But also it might open up a world to like clients who probably have the same thoughts, you know, like, I don't know if this case manager will be open. So it's one of those things, do you do that on a personal level, like when you begin to work with a client, or is that something that you do have on your like email signatures or name tag with, you know, with your pronouns? Not that you're non-binary, but maybe you do use they, them, not sure, but it's definitely something to think about, and, you know, with safety first, but also it could be helpful to clients who you serve who may be not sure, you know. And
I think Mary, you have your hand raised. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, you're still on mute.
it's still muted for some reason.
I think, oh, it looked like it flashed off of mute and then muted you again, so I don't know.
No, we can't hear you.
Now it looks like you're off. Oh, never mind. It went back on.
Yeah, it
keeps remuting you. Yeah.
Am I unmuted or muted?
Oh, there you go.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'd like to thank Deidra and Bex for a great presentation. I have a lot to learn, and I've been learning slowly, but I continue to learn. I'm Mary Neubauer, and I'm on the Milwaukee County Mental Health Board, and I've had a great opportunity to work with Christy and a couple other people from the agency, your new director, and we've been able to actually cross over and do some referring to the Department of Aging and try to get some funding going for the aging and disability group from LGBTQ Community Center. So we're working on that and going to be putting in some things in this next budget for mental health services. So just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was looking at something and, you know, I see there's a few case managers who hold certain identities and kind of not sure in which way to go, or, you know, or have had positive or negative experiences with, you know, sharing their identities. And I'm not sure if like some of the places you work, if you all have, do you have, like, do you have not support groups, but employee groups where employee like LGBT groups, where you can kind of talk about this and discuss and figure out best practices, you know, for you all, because, you know, I definitely see it as being helpful to clients. With me working on the side of working with individuals who feel like case managers don't understand them, I think for a lot of people it may help and, you know, and open up doors and have them be more receptive to the services that you're trying to help provide them with also.
And also, yeah, more than welcome to come to support group here at the center, or there's a number of them that actually happen in the area. So to talk to other folks just about their experience with being out or not, and like the work environment or working with clients or anything like that.
I also was thinking too, like, you know, so intake forms are important, right? When people are coming into places. So what do your intake forms look like? Are you asking people their identities? Because, you know, that may help when being assigned cases, you know, not that you should get out everyone who identifies as LGBT, but it definitely could be helpful with that person's growth that we're working with. And also like just more inclusive, you know, because sometimes I don't hold those identities, but you know, you see male, female, and just other, and you're thinking like, oh, this could have been worded differently. It doesn't take much to add to some of our intake forms. So that's something to think about. Like if you have employee like planning meetings, how can we be more inclusive like immediately, like when we first see our clients? Because that small step could have someone open up a little more and be more receptive to services. Also, yeah, if you want like this training like done for your like coworkers or people you supervise, also you can reach out to me and we can set that up. The training will be done by myself or Bex. We also have Alea, our youth program coordinator, or our associate director, Ricardo. Most of us do the trainings. And Christy Carter, if you do work with people in the aging and disabilities population. All are excellent and open and definitely would be willing to, you know, help support you all in that way. And I do want to personally thank Amy. Amy has been great. Amy is what you call a super ally. Like we met at
Alternatives, and Pam's here.
Yeah, we met at Alternatives at a cookout, and it was it was a cookout for like agencies that they may partner with, and it was like excellent. We just kind of connected, and then you know, she has a family member who comes to the center on a regular and has seen growth with that person. And it's just been excellent. And so we've kind of stayed in communication over the time. And that was during the pandemic when we met. Definitely excited, and definitely was excited to be in touch and join MC3 with Amy.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We sure do love the center and utilize it in about 8 different ways. And so we do appreciate all the work that you do down there. So and also now a wonderful presentation for our change agents. And so we can certainly carry on the conversation and continue asking questions for Deidra and Bex. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to go ahead and drop the certificate of attendance in the chat. I'm not quite sure why, but the link for the certificate of attendance is very long today, but it should work. So somebody please try it and let me know. But it's going in now. And then, like I said, we can go ahead and continue on our conversation for a little bit. Because I know that there were other people that had questions too.
Well, I would just like to thank Deidra and Bex as well. And yeah, the cookout was a great success, and we raised close to $2,000 for the center. And I had the privilege of coming over to the center, and on our SharePoint page is a picture of myself and that of your agency. I'm not